Let's go through some of the things that I do before brew day, like making a yeast starter, making up a new batch of sanitizer for brew day, and also cleaning my kettles and lines.
I didn't come to start no trouble or hurt no one. I'm just here to get drunk, party, and have some fun.
Alright, so first things first is the other day I kind of left my sanitizer bucket uncovered, so for me that's a no-no. I immediately dump the whole thing, get rid of it, and make a new batch. So right now I'm actually going to clean my sanitizing bucket, which seems kind of weird, but whatever. And then I'm going to throw some sanitizer back in it so that I can sanitize my flask for my starter. All right, so I got a little bit of PBW into my carboy. It's just a water bucket. I have my carboy brush. I'm gonna go ahead and scrub that baby out, and then grab my Star San and throw some water in there and make some sanitizer. So I have approximately 2.5 gallons of water in my sanitizer bucket. 1 ounce per 5 gallons. So I have half an ounce. You can see that second line. And then I just dump it right in. Give her a good shake, and I always add the cleaner to the water so that it doesn't bubble like crazy when I'm adding the water. Also, just as a general rule, you should add the cleaner to the water in case you get splashed back up in your eyes and you got water splashing you in the face, not concentrated cleaner. I have my flask filled up with sanitizer. Also sanitize the funnel. The funnel is essential for me dumping in my yeast. I don't really want the yeast sitting on the sides of the flask, just sitting there kind of rotting over the next 3 days while I make my yeast starter. So I like to make sure that it goes right into the wort. Okay, I got my sanitized flask. I measured out the water. I want it to be about 1250. I don't know, that should be pretty good. About 1250 for a cup of DME. Stir bars in there. I'm going to dump the water straight into the pot, and then I'll probably sanitize the flask one more time. You get a lot of clumping with DME when you add it to hot water, so what I like to do is add it to cold water. I got this burner warming up. This burner is not on, so I'm going to slowly stir in my DME while it's cold. We'll mix that in, and then I'm going to boil it for 10 to 15 minutes, and then cool it down and throw it into the flask. You might be kind of wondering, why do you do a yeast starter? There's so many products out there, pitchable packs that you can just dump them right in. I do that all the time. However, if I really like a strain of yeast, I keep it and I harvest it. This is kind of a crazy amount of yeast. That's a lot. That is what happens when you start using a conical. So basically, I dumped all the trub, all the protein, dumped some of the hot material, and then I got all the healthy yeast, dumped it into there, did one more dump after. So that should all be healthy yeast. It's been a while since I've used it, probably like 2 months. So that's why I'm doing a yeast starter instead of just doing like a pitchable pack. I'm just going to do a yeast starter, get some healthy cells going again, and that's going to be my lager yeast. So that is why I'm going through all this trouble. In the meantime, you can go ahead and get your ice bath set up. You're going to cool it down to pitching temp. You don't want to just throw your yeast into boiling wort or anything close to 90 or 80, or you'll kill your yeast. You don't want that. Alright, so chilled it down to about 68. That's pretty good for me. Pretty happy with that. Chilling the wort. also at the same time bringing my yeast up to room temperature so that I don't shock it. You can see that I harvested this on January 19th. That's about 3.5 months ago. That's a little bit old. That's why I'm doing a starter. So hopefully this all works out for the best. That's a little bit old, but we'll see what happens. Alright, I had just below 1200 milliliters in there, so I basically just dumped the yeast in until it's about 1200 milliliters. I'll get that upstairs, that's where it's the warmest place, and I'll get that propagating for about 3 days. Yeast is pitched, propagating, off to the races. This has been on the stir plate for about 3 days. I'm going to take it off right now. It's about 12 hours before brew day, and I'm going to stick it in the fridge. This is my haul of ingredients. You can see the cooler right there. I'm going to weigh out 9 pounds of Vienna and 1 pound of aromatic in there, and then I'm going to mill that up tonight, the night before brew day. I have my grain mill set to the particular crush that I wanted for the Vienna malt. I got my drill hooked up. I got a nice little laundry detergent to weigh it down. I have a quarter drill that has a trigger lock on it. I'm not going to use that. I don't like it. What I do is I just set up my drill. I got a quick clamp here. I put that on the trigger. I put my foot kind of bracing the side, because otherwise if you grind too much it'll actually start spinning the drill, and it's kind of crazy, and then I kind of worry about my crush. So put the quick clamp on the trigger, and then I let her start going, start spinning, and then I start dumping the grain in. So here we go. Looks a lot like this. There you go. That was milling 10 pounds of grain. And then I'll just leave that pretty much like that overnight. Let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll just cover that with the grain mill. Be ready to go in the morning. Let's take a look at it actually. 0.5 is pretty well crushed. See that? I'll use a bag if I have to. Alright, I got a bunch of hoses running everywhere right now. I got my boil kettle. Some PBW rotating in there, recirculating. Sitting at 110 degrees right now, and I'm just gonna let that kind of mix in there, and then eventually I'll just run it through the whole system. So through one kettle to the pump, back up, probably through somewhere in here, back through, and then it's gonna run eventually through my Therminator into the sink. That's after I scrub every single kettle. So just letting the PBW kind of break down into the water. Got my temperature probe stuck into the thermal well right now. and was really happy with the results. It was reading almost dead on. The controller and the thermometer were pretty much dead on. Right now they're not even close. Oh, that's because this is no longer exposed to the water. That would be why. So this is reading correct, 101. This was sitting at about 102, I would say. So maybe a degree variance, but I'm pretty happy with the difference there. All right, I will be using a new kettle tomorrow, so I have to know my dead space into the kettle, and then I'll plug that into Beersmith, and all my volumes should come out correct. So I do that by dumping the water after draining the cleaner into the sink. I'm going to dump it into a glass growler and see what I'm left with. Alright, that's not much, so I'm going to say half, quarter, maybe a fifth. So I'll go with 0.2 gallons for my dead space on my mash tun. This is what I'm using for a false bottom in my mash tun. I think it's a 12-inch, just regular false bottom. I don't have a fancy spike one. Yeah, and then I just got 2 barb fittings with a hose running between them, and I actually stuck a piece of hose on the bottom of my false bottom, so hopefully I get a little bit of suction down there too. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to do before brew day is get my water treatment and salts and stuff going here. So I'm going to get my scale on, tear it down to 0. I'm going to start with my smallest addition, which would be calcium chloride of 0.6, which is not much at all. Probably not even worth doing. Okay, 0.6. I'm going to tear that. Epsom salt 1.3. Well, that's perfect. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is gypsum, 3.3 grams. Alright, so tomorrow should just be pretty much wake up, grab a cup of coffee, come downstairs, and get my strike water going and start brewing. So thanks for watching my pre-day steps of what I do before I even start brew day.
Big L. Throw that L up in the air. We gonna have you do this shit all motherfucking night, so get used to it. Get used to it. This is for my man Big L. Word of heart, word of heart. Put your L's up, put your L's up, put your L's up, put your L's up. Big L. One nigga C-Town. One big brother, big league, holding it down. Flamboyant, baby. For life, for life. Big L. For my man, Big L. Yo, you know the game plan. C-Town, that's my main man. We never bring luggage, we go shopping when the plane lands. Still run with the same clan, used to be a Kane fan. Everything I rock is name brand. Elevate your day swallow. Your ice don't shine and your chain hollow. Why you frontin' clubs for hours with the same bottle? Taking bitches sips, I run with the richest clicks. Tap the thickest chicks, plus drop the slickest hits. You know nothing about L, so don't doubt L. What's this motherfucking rap game without L? Yo, that's like Jules without ice. That's like China without rice. Or the Holy Bible without Christ. Or the Bulls without Michael. Crackheads without pipes. The village without dikes. Or hockey games without fights. Don't touch the mic if you ain't able to spit. Flamboyant is the label I'm with, motherfucker. Big
Big